of the heatsink, just a tiny touch on each part. It'll be the pressure of the CPU being screwed down that will spread the compound out evenly, and sometimes it doesn't quite reach the corners, so just a tiny touch on each corner. Screw them down. I screw them down in a diagonal so that the pressure is equal on each corner. As you screw it down, you don't want pressure on any one part of the CPU, as of course you could either move it in its socket, bend pins, or possibly even damage. Just finger tight, it doesn't have to be too much. Let's tighten the wires again, bring them through, tidy up. As you'll be able to see into this section, the last thing you want to see is a lot of wires hanging out of everything. So everything's in now, in the main body. So plug the main header power cable into the motherboard. And again, we're just going to tidy up, but before we do that, I'm just going to plug the front header for the USB 3 into the USB 3 socket as well. And then just tidy up again. Pull the wires through that they're out of sight. Just tie them down. So now we have the header for the bottom fan. Once the cover is on then for the power supply, you won't be able to see the cable at all, apart from the small part that comes out and goes into the header itself. That cover's on, I'll be putting the SSDs on top of the cover. I'm going to plug the plug wires in, or the power wires into the GPU as well, into the graphics card. Now, as this is a common rail power supply, it doesn't matter if I use one or two power leads for the graphics card. They're very good quality leads, so one is sufficient, even though it does take two headers. One is a 6 and one is an 8 pin. Cabling is actually heavy enough to be able to take was the ampage and the draw from the power supply that the R290 takes. I should say R290X, slightly different chip. The other advantage of using the Asus R290 or an Asus graphics card with an Asus board is that the software you get, I'll show you it when we finish the build, that controls all the fans and overclocking, will control the GPU as well. So you can control the fans of the graphics card, the motherboard itself, the CPU cooler, and all the fans on the case. And you can actually control the overclocking of the CPU and the graphics card all from the one piece of software. And we have the other power lead here. Not the best of angles, sorry about that. Just plug this one in. And this lead is going to feed the power into the SSDs and the hard drive. So just put the SSDs in loosely in place for the moment. You have to be careful with these things, but you don't have to be overly careful. They're fairly rugged things, not like a mechanical hard drive where you've got the platters to worry about. Just going to make sure the last of the leads are all plugged in here. Tidy them away a little so they don't touch the fan. So these are the two SSDs. They're going to be mounted on top of the cover for the power supply. So just fit the cover back in. Probably be as fiddly as it was to get out, but at least I know now how it actually works. The three dots you see on the bottom there fit into the three little cutouts in the bottom of the cover. Move the wires out of the way so nothing gets pinched, and drop it in and slide it in. A little bit tight. That's the second. Just give it a little bit more tight because the thread is quite fresh on it, so it's quite tight, not screwing in all the way. And the same for this one. So now we have the cover on. If you're wondering why I have the two SSDs in RAID as well, it's because I have two operating systems which I control by selecting in the BIOS when I boot up. Windows 7, which I kept on this dual SSD RAID 0 array, and Windows 10, which is on the M.2 SSD stick. When I upgraded, I actually copied the Windows 7 to the SSD stick and upgraded the SSD stick. So I had a backup copy of Windows 7 always available if anything went wrong. So now the next part will be to fix the actual SSDs in place on top of the power supply cover. And they fit quite nicely side by side there. Now I'm not going to drill holes and screw, as I think I may have showed you in an earlier video. I'm going to use, it's almost like a Velcro type tape, and it's safely removable so it doesn't damage paintwork or pull any paperwork off or whatever the back of the SSDs. Comes in these little strips. They're just pushed together. So I've cut two of the strips up, so we got two strips per SSD, and they just peel off the back of the tape and stick it to the SSD. Then once they're all in place, peel off the other side and put the SSD down so that they are lined up properly. You don't have to worry about trying to line everything up. The second SSD. So pull the back tapes off of these now. And then we'll just flip them over and put them in place. Trying to place them as neat as possible. But as these strips are removable, it's quite easy to just adjust them later on to get them spot on. Just put them in place and press them down quite firmly so that the tack sticks to the top of the cover. There we go, firmly in place, and we'll continue the build in the next of the videos.